It's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right. A loyal man who brings the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? As long as there's no bill of right to which we must be true. No, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? Who'll measure him against the others and then you compare. You cast your vote for Kennedy and the case is overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Reaching out to find a way to make tomorrow a brighter day. Make your dream reality. More than ever, it's a now for you and me. It's a now, it's a now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. It's a now, it's a now. More than ever, it's a now. This and America, it's a now.
George Wall. Wow, that's rough. It was a good class after break. Before that, I was so lost. But
I didn't want anything but those models. None of it.
thank you for this is the entire second class.
What?
This is the entire second class. That's what
Well, I mean, I wish I'd been there then for lecture if it was helpful.
it was really helpful. Social science stuff. We didn't mean to go into that, but you started talking about like null hypothesis,
So,
and
I'm going to think that we should talk like in a formal next.
I would have loved to take the research behind that. Definitely seems like really passionate about. He seems like he really likes research, and he was like really. I like this. He seems like really happy.
Hey class, we have a guest lecturer today. Many of you know JJ because he is your fellow, but if you don't, JJ Ames is a fellow and graduate student in the political science department. You know, it's not the first thing he's done. For example, he's been a political consultant for about 29 years. He's been a federal prosecutor. He's been a private practice attorney. You know, I mean, I think he's pretty much done everything at this point. So he decided graduate student was the way to go. And so we get the benefit of his expertise. And so if you will welcome him today.
everybody. First and foremost, if you got in late, you didn't see the Kennedy theme song that ran before the Nixon theme song. I'm trying to keep this as bipartisan as we possibly can. This is not an ideological lecture, it's a lecture on campaign advertising. Some of the ads you'll see will come from Republicans, some from Democrats, and a couple from independents, and you might like the independent ads more so than any of the others. But good morning, and I want to ask you, when someone says campaign advertising, most people think of the barrage of TV and radio and digital ads that bombard people once every 2 years for just about 100 days. Now, if candidates and campaigns looked at the term campaign advertising in the same way, they could run 50 candidates for 50 offices, and the next oh, there we go. They can run 50 candidates for 50 offices. And the next speech that any of those candidates would deliver would always end with the phrase, "Do you want fries with that?" Campaign advertising is advertising. It is selling something. Same way that Apple sells iPhones, the Skittles sells colored sugar. And every piece of campaign literature, every campaign button, every campaign yard sign, yes, every TV, radio, digital ad that you thought about when I began this lecture, it's all campaign advertising. Make no mistake, in at least one case occurring through the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, one candidate who was thought to be a viable contender one candidate who was thought to be a viable contender for the Democratic presidential nomination torpedoed their own campaign before their first TV ad hit the air. How's that? Now, what you see on the screen right now is an example of a 170-year-old campaign slogan, which set the tone for a successful presidential campaign. You might not be able to use it in 2021 without a bit of backlash, but in 1852, it not only sounded pretty sick, it made complete sense in context. It also made Franklin Pierce the 14th president of the United States. Of course, there was no TV, radio, or digital campaign in 1852, but all that did was make this form of campaign advertising just that much more important. In 2020, when there was plenty of TV, radio, and digital capacity, Kamala Harris launched her campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination with the slogan, "Kamala Harris for the people." And from day one of the Harris campaign, no amount of money, no SuperPAC influence, no amount of strategy, no campaign manager or consultant could have saved this campaign. Why? Kamala Harris is a former prosecutor, former criminal prosecutor. Her husband is also a lawyer. Her campaign manager, who had never run a nationwide campaign before, they all thought that the best way to brand their campaign would be to tell the voters who would likely make up her base of support that she was for the people. Now, in 2020, the year of the woman candidate, at a time when more women candidates won more federal electoral contests than at any other time in history, and when minority female candidates were absolutely positioned to be successful, the only African-American female in the Democratic presidential primary chose the slogan, "For the people." So what? She probably was and still is for the people. But let me ask you this. Who in this room has ever been inside of a criminal courtroom? You don't have to tell us why. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ever seen a court show, TV show that had a court case in it? Movie that had a court case in it? That's more hands, okay. If you've been in a criminal court, or if you've seen a trial on TV, what is the very first thing that the judge, every judge, asks every prosecutor at the start of every criminal case? Now, being a former prosecutor, I can tell you, the judge says, as he or she did to Kamala Harris at least 1,000 times, are both counsel ready to proceed? And over 1,000 times, Kamala Harris stood and responded, Kamala Harris, Your Honor, for the people. Now, remember what political advertising is. What do we say political advertising is? It's advertising. You're branding and selling your candidate and your campaign. And in this case, the people selling the campaign of the only African-American female candidate in a 24-person race, where all 24 candidates would carve up the electoral pie so much so that you would only need 1 in 5 Democrats to secure the nomination. They decided that it would attract minority voters by branding the candidate with the first words so many members of the minority community hear just before being handcuffed and sent to jail. I met with representatives of the campaign before the launch and advised against the use of that slogan. But the Harris campaign believed that with the support of activists and mobilizable African-American women and youth, the campaign could watch 23 other candidates divide up the balance of the Democratic primary electorate, and that they could then come out with the most delegates. And within days after the campaign launched, not only the media, but interest groups from within the presumed Harris base of support began to hammer the campaign regarding her status as a former prosecutor. Stories came out about her treatment of criminal defendants, and while being tough on crime generally works for candidates in general elections, when you're the only African-American female in a 24-person race, relying nearly exclusively on minority and women voters to float your vote, you cannot afford to have your first piece of campaign advertising, your campaign brand, prevent you from ever getting to what we traditionally think of as campaign advertising. I mentioned this because in labs over the next 2 weeks, you're going to be producing a campaign ad. So remember, produce an ad which makes people want to buy what you're selling and not run away from it. We talked about money in SuperPACs on Monday in this class. And I want to get right into the issue of SuperPACs again today. Of course, the amount of money spent on political advertising has increased since 1852. That happened and was going to continue whether or not corporations became people after Citizens United, and whether or not the tax code allowed certain political education entities to buy ads without ever identifying who their donors were or where the money came from. But Citizens United was decided in 2010. And in the first partial reporting period after Citizens United, as you can see, 83 SuperPACs, which are creatures of Citizens United, 83 SuperPACs spent $62.5 million in the balance of the 2010 electoral cycle. By 2020, total spending on federal elections was over $14 billion, not million, $14 billion. With 2,276 SuperPACs raising $3.5 billion. 35 SuperPACs that you see listed on slide 9 That's about half the total number of super PACs which existed 10 years earlier. And these 35 super PACs alone spent nearly $2 billion just in the 2020 cycle. Now, what is prompting the raising and spending of so much super PAC money, other than the mere existence of super PACs themselves? In 2016, in the Republican presidential primary, there were over 20 candidates seeking an opportunity to replace Barack Obama. In 2020, as mentioned, there were 24 Democrats vying for an opportunity to oust President Trump. Now, did Ben Carson truly believe in 2016 that he was a viable presidential candidate? Did Lindsey Graham? Did Carly Fiorina? In 2020, could Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Sestak have thought that they had the proverbial snowball's chance at securing the presidential nomination? Now, sure, some of those 45 plus candidates were attempting to set up future runs for offices or to sell books, and that is a proper function of political advertising. Or maybe they just wanted to tell their grandkids that they ran for president. But what allowed all 45 of these individuals to actually run for president for more than 27 minutes was the fact that each one of them had at least one single candidate super PAC supporting them. Super PACs come in two flavors. One which supports and opposes any number of candidates or causes, and another where 100% of their resources are expended in support of a single candidate. Now, how many Republicans will run for president in 2024? I think the list is already about 30, including the governor of South Dakota. Anybody have any idea who the governor of South Dakota is right now? Don't look it up. That'll just encourage you by seeing your name appear 100 more times in Google search. The point here is that the 20 plus Republicans in 2016, the 24 Democrats in 2020, the 30 Republicans who will run in 2024, and the gaggle of candidates which will be seen in every presidential primary from now until corporations stop paying people, they're there because super PAC monies will allow them to at least produce enough campaign advertising to establish a brand and get their message out, at least to the 6 people who think that they might make a good president someday. Single candidate super PACs raised nearly $1 billion in 2016. And you can see that virtually every announced Republican candidate had the support of at least one single candidate super PAC. Nearly another $1 billion was raised by single candidate super PACs in 2020. And even though the focus in 2020 was more Senate-oriented than on the presidential primary, again, most of the Democratic contenders benefited from super PAC spending by single candidate super PACs. And today, I can tell you firsthand that political consultants in Washington can't swing a dead cat without hitting 6 multimillionaires. And they're out there recruiting individuals with very niche political ideologies or just the right target demographic. And they're getting these rich people to commit to funding a single candidate super PAC for prospective candidate X. And then the consultant goes to prospective candidate X, like the governor of South Dakota, and sells them on the fact that there's a super PAC out there willing to push them into higher office, indirectly, of course. The candidate is happy. The consultant is very happy. The super PAC founder is happy. The media is happy because they get to sell more ads at higher rates for a longer period of time. And presidential primary debates become a circus, with higher rated candidates referring to lesser candidates as holding their debates at the kiddies' table. Which leads us into different types of ads that the bulk of this money is being used to produce. Normally, the first type of ad that a candidate releases at or near the time their campaign kicks off is called a biographical ad. Biographical ads introduce your candidate to the electorate, and if you did it properly, they serve as the first building block in the establishment of your brand. Now, the ad you're going to see now, this is perhaps the best example of a biographical ad that I've seen in almost 3 decades. And I think you'll understand why in a minute.
Women like me aren't supposed to run for office. I wasn't born to a wealthy or powerful family. Mother from Puerto Rico, dad from the South Bronx. I was born in a place where your zip code determines your destiny. My name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm an educator, an organizer, a working class New Yorker. I've worked with expectant mothers, I've waited tables and led classrooms. And going into politics wasn't in the plan. But after 20 years of the same representation, we have to ask, who has New York been changing for? Every day gets harder for working families like mine to get by. The rent gets higher, healthcare covers less, and our income stays the same. It's clear that these changes haven't been for us, and we deserve a champion. It's time to fight for a New York that working families can afford. That's why I'm running for Congress. This race is about people versus money. We've got people, they've got money. It's time we acknowledge that not all Democrats are the same. That a Democrat who takes corporate money, profits off foreclosure, doesn't live here, doesn't send his kids to our schools, doesn't drink our water or breathe our air, cannot possibly represent us. What the Bronx East needs is Medicare for all, tuition for public college, federal jobs guarantee, and criminal justice reform. We can do it now. It doesn't take 100 years to do this. It takes political courage. A New York for the many is possible. It's time for one of us. Vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on June 26th.
Before that ad ran, no one knew Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You could have walked by her on the street in New York City for 1,000 times and wouldn't have made a difference. She also was not running against a Republican when that ad came out. She was running against a Democrat in a primary. And not just any Democrat. She was running against a 10-term incumbent who was the number 3 Democrat in the House of Representatives and the heir apparent to become the Speaker of the House after Nancy Pelosi retired. That ad let everybody know all they needed to know. If you didn't know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez before you saw that ad, you now know who she is, you know a lot about her, and most importantly, you know why she's running for office. 99.5% of candidates make the same mistake over and over and over again, regardless of who their consultant is. They do not tell the public why they want the job. If they don't know why they want the job, and they can't convey to the campaign manager why they want the job, how am I supposed to get you to go for it? Okay? On the other hand, if you're a first-time candidate, with little money, nobody knows you, you still want to run for office, you might have to find other ways to make a big splash in the name recognition pool.
You know what I want? A Minneapolis mayor that really represents the people.
For $1 million to be spent to become the mayor of Minneapolis, $100,000 a year job. You're not the ones that are deciding who you vote for. The media and the money is. I am cool with making $100,000 a year. I will not take money from the developers. I will not take money from the political angle. I will not even go to the strip clubs anymore. Wake the fuck up.
Wow.
Jeff Wagner, approve this message.
Now, I'm not thinking you're gonna remember Jeff's name. But you're probably gonna be wondering, at least for the next 31 seconds, whether he actually lives in a yellow submarine. And extra points for anybody who gets the yellow submarine reference. If you're an unknown candidate in search of immediate name recognition, you might be fortunate enough to find yourself in a state like New York, where in gubernatorial races, you don't need to spend money to achieve your objective, because debates come early and often, and anyone who qualifies for the ballot gets a spot on the debate stage. And remember, everything, including debate appearances, are part of campaign advertising. P.S. This is a real candidate running for governor of the state of New York.
Representative rent's too damn high part. People working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, some a third job. Women can't afford to take care of their children, feed their children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My main job is to provide a roof over your head, food on the table, and money in your pocket. This is politics as usual. Playing the silly game. It's not going to happen. Rent through them out moving. The people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent. They're being laid off right now as I speak. They can't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Listen, someone's stomach, child's stomach just growled. Did you hear it? Y'all listen like me.
Okay.
Let's talk about the issue.
Mr.
People can't afford to pay their rent.
30 seconds for you, sir.
As a karate expert, I will not talk about anyone up here, because our children can't afford to live anywhere. Nowhere. There's nowhere to go. Once again, why? You said the rent is too damn high.
Mr. McMillan. Mr. Cuomo.
First, I'm with Jimmy, the rent is too damn high. Rent too damn high, part of if you want to marry, shoot, I'll marry.
So who agrees with Jimmy that the rent's too damn high? Good. I think the last class was still asleep when I asked that question. This one you can look up on Google, because Saturday Night Live made Jimmy McMillan a bona fide rock star, who will never again have to worry about how he's going to pay the rent. Trust me. He can live to be 100, he get all the money he needs now. The next type of campaign ad that I want to cover is called an inoculation ad. Candidates today, they know that they're going to be attacked at some point. And most of them know exactly what form the attack will take long before it happens. This is because every candidate knows exactly what is going to be found by the other side during opposition research. An inoculation ad is an attempt to get out ahead of the attack and basically tells the electorate, well, let's just play the clip.
Martha McSally hates apple pie. McSally will destroy Social Security.
Hey there, that's totally wrong. My commitment is to protect Social Security and Medicare.
Martha McSally wants to end student loans.
Wrong again.
I got it. Well, Martha McSally's war on women.
Are you kidding me? This is why people are fed up with politics. The lies keep growing, but the jobs don't. I'm Martha McSally, and I approve this message because it's time for a change.
McSally dislikes melons.
Watch.
Now, that ad was run by Martha McSally. In 2014, she was running as a Republican candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives from Arizona. Let's see how a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate in a runoff election in Georgia in 2021,
Just take attendance.
in 2021 decided to address the inoculation issue.
Taking attendance.
Oh, we're taking attendance to this.
With a forked knife, Raphael Warnock once stepped on a crack in the sidewalk. Raphael Warnock even hates puppies.
Get ready, Georgia. The negative ads are coming. Kelly Loeffler doesn't want to talk about why she's for getting rid of healthcare in the middle of the pandemic. So she's going to try and scare you with lies about me. I'm Raphael Warnock, and I approve this message because I'm staying focused on what Washington could do for you. And by the way, I love puppies.
Republicans in Arizona love puppies. Democrats in Georgia love puppies. Who says there's no bipartisanship in Congress? But while we're keeping things a little bit lighter here, self-deprecating humor ads are designed to personalize a candidate, and they're becoming much more popular in campaign advertising today. And when they're done very well, kind of can't beat them. This one's done pretty well.
We've got room to put 2,700 people in our jail. It costs us about $103 a day.
Gerald really doesn't have any hobbies.
Last year's tax rate was 14169. This year, we can take that down to 3838.
So is he always like that?
Yeah, all the time.
Which means 3838 probably get there somewhere between 3838 or 1.69.
Most people live to work at the office.
We got 3 light rail cars. You can put 60 people on each car. So even if you add 2 cars, you're talking about maybe 300 people that are affected. There are 1 million people in this community. I mean, that is 0.01 to the 8th power. If you round it off, it's 0.
All he wants to do is fix things.
So get this 18-wheeler as part of this neighborhood, do fumes all over the place, but quite frankly, it's not a code violation.
You know, I think I like the number on the house here.
Please reelect Gerald. Please.
Gerald did get reelected, by the way, 3 more times since that ad. And there's a couple the type of ad types that we didn't cover today, but these are the types that chose these because these are the ones you're going to see most often during the course of your political lifetime. We're nearing the end of the time that we're talking about these ads. And we can't close without talking about the 2 types of ads, which are going to get the most attention and where basically 90% of the SuperPAC dollars are going to be spent for the rest of your voting experience. That would be attack ads and contrast ads. Now, the most ironic aspect of this next ad that's coming up is that it was run by a Republican congressman from San Diego named Duncan Hunter. And at the time that the ad ran, Duncan Hunter was under a 60-count federal indictment for federal tax fraud and for election fraud. And yet, he still won the election, still won re-election, only resigned from Congress after he pled guilty to a lesser charge. And I think that, again, you'll see the effect of this attack ad just a second.
Amar Kapanar is working to infiltrate Congress. He's used 3 different names to hide his family's ties to terrorism. His grandfather masterminded the Bulgaarian massacre. His father said they deserved to die. A Palestinian Mexican millennial Democrat named Amar Kapanar doesn't get support from the people of San Diego.
He is being supported by CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a well-orchestrated plan.
Amar Kapanar, a risk we can't ignore.
I'm Duncan Hunter, and I approve this message.
2 things. 1, nothing about issues at all. His father's a bad guy, his grandfather's a bad guy, he's being supported by the Muslim Brotherhood. That's an attempt at branding the other candidate through a negative attack. Did you notice that Duncan Hunter, the candidate himself, was in his military fatigues with a military weapon at his side, branding himself in San Diego, an area where the largest employer is the United States. You have to understand that as you train in campaign advertising, as you understand more about campaign advertising, every single frame of every single television ad has meaning. The person who produced that ad, the person who created that ad, the voiceover talent, they want to emphasize a specific point with each and every frame in the commercial. And they've done enough psychological testing to know exactly what it is that's going to affect them now. This next ad is what's called a contrast ad. Contrast ads usually occur at the end or near the end of the campaign, after you have effectively branded your own candidate and hopefully very effectively branded your opposition candidate. part of your job is to not only brand your own candidate, but brand the opposition as well. Contrast ads present that clear choice that you want the voter to have at the point in time when they're casting their actual ballot.
Over the next 4 months, you have a choice to make. Not just between two political parties, or even two people. It's a choice between two very different plans for our country. Governor Romney's plan would cut taxes for the folks at the very top, roll back regulations on big banks, and he says that if we do, our economy will grow and everyone will benefit. But you know what? We tried that top-down approach. It's what caused the mess in the first place. I believe the only way to create an economy built to last is to strengthen the middle class, asking the wealthy to pay a little more so we can pay down our debt in a balanced way, so that we can afford to invest in education, manufacturing, and homegrown American energy for good middle-class jobs. Sometimes politics can seem very small, but the choice you face couldn't be bigger. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Now, the Obama campaign ran this ad a little bit earlier than normal, but they had been very effective in branding themselves and in branding Governor Romney. And they did it early enough to get added mileage out of the contrast ad. When you take into account that many states now have early balloting that starts in September, we're going to start seeing contrast ads earlier and earlier, which means we're going to start seeing that definition, that branding earlier and earlier as well, which is a great thing. The last type of ad that we're going to look at right now is called a get out the vote ad. And without any question, the single most effective get out the vote ad in the history of American politics came in 1964 in the election between Lyndon Johnson and Barry Goldwater, where the Johnson campaign had convinced just about everybody that Barry Goldwater was hell-bent to destroy the planet.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
The steps to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
If a 4-year-old getting nuked doesn't get you off the couch.
Presentation of the Library of Congress. Visitors at loc.gov.
We'll do that in about 20 minutes. Like I said, if a 4-year-old getting nuked isn't enough to get you off the couch, I don't know what is. I mentioned earlier that you're going to be producing your own campaign ads in labs. And to close, I want to share 2 more clips. The first one is designed to show you that you can have an impact on political campaigns from where you are right now. You know how to use TikTok and Insta, and this citizen-produced spot that you're going to see next predates both of those social media platforms and was named in 2008 as a top 10 meme of the decade by Newsweek magazine, and also a top internet moment of all time by Webby.
Thank all of you for your time, your suggestions, your encouragement, and your prayers. And I look forward to continuing our conversation in the weeks and months to come.
Maybe it's me. If you're there, pick up. I was just watching you on C-SPAN. you're so fine. 'Cause I got a crush on you. Till 2008. Baby, you're the best candidate. I like it when you get hot. I'm Hillary in debate. Don't you think I'm your fool? 'Cause I got a crush on you. In 2008. Baby, you're the best candidate. Up and you go from office, you get your head to stay. I can't leave you alone, 'cause I got a crush on your father. You went to border security. Let's put this border between you and me. You never self-care before. It makes me warm. You tell the truth, I love the right. You can love, but you can fight. You can borrow me tonight. I got a crush on you. Till 2008. Baby, you're the best candidate. I like it when you get hot. I'm Hillary in debate. Don't you think I'm your fool? 'Cause I got a crush on you. In 2008. Baby, you're the best candidate. Up and you go from office, you get your head to stay. I can't leave you alone, 'cause I got a crush on you. And sticky puppy and
Now, the reason why we watched that ad all the way to the end was to show you those four people on the roof of that building, that they're four regular people. Who leads a super PAC? They were not affiliated with a campaign. They were not affiliated with a party. There were four kids from New York who put an ad out, or put a spot out like this, and none of them will ever have to work again as long as they live. That ad has generated 120 million views. All of them are now involved in aspects of either advertising or marketing, because that's what political campaign ads are. They're advertising and marketing. And I showed you that ad to show you that they were regular people, probably sitting in a class 20 minutes before they decided they were going to do this. And everything worked out for them. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to get that elaborate in the campaign ads that you're going to be producing. But this final video that I'm going to show you right now will at least steer you in the right direction, and I'll have a little bit more to say about the synergy, the convergence between the Obama girl ad and this ad in just a second.
The last presidential election has taught us the power of political branding, using targeting tactics for persuasive content, and that there are many ways to galvanize voters in the digital age. If there's one thing that we can all walk away with, other than the notion that anything is possible, it's that video content is essential for running a successful campaign. Not all budgets are created equal, but believe it or not, you probably already have the tools that you need to create your next campaign. Your smartphone. Every political campaign follows the same formula. First, you need a script, something that helps tell us a story, explain your position, or separates you from your opponent. Once you've written your script, consider using a Fiverr voiceover artist. You won't have to deal with the hassles of not having a proper microphone. Always shoot in landscape mode. Clean your lens. Don't use the zoom function. It's a digital zoom, not an optical. And this will degrade your image. Use the exposure lock. Put your phone in airplane mode because you don't want to be disturbed. Stabilize with a gimbal or a tripod. Get quality sound with a microphone upgrade. You'll want some still images of the candidate that will be animated for transition shots. These shots range from the candidate giving speeches to the community to old photographs. The point here is that the candidate has a history with it. Third, you want viewer. Dynamic and engaging viewer can take any video from amateur to professional. So make sure you get a lot of diverse footage both outdoors and indoor locations. Anything that reminds the viewer that the candidate knows and loves their community. And last but not least, you'll want to include a dialogue shot of the candidate talking to a voter. There are 3 critical shots needed here. First, get a wide shot of the candidate talking to the voters. Second, get a shot of the candidate from over the voter's shoulder. And 3, get a shot of the voter from over the candidate's shoulder. Keep these things in mind once the cameras roll. Location. Always make sure to shoot during the day and always in landscape. Lighting. Use a bright light, like the LED light. Editing, special effects. Simple software like iMovie usually does the trick. But for more advanced special effects, check out Fiverr's video category. Music. There are plenty of stock music sites to choose from. For a more original piece, there are thousands of talented composers, producers, and musicians to choose from on Fiverr. Remember, the most important thing is video quality. Always take more shots than are needed. And if you're looking to elevate your campaign branding, speech writing, or social media marketing, Fiverr is a great place to start.
Now, you're not going to be using Fiverr because in our class, you are the candidate, you are the producer, the director, the writer, and the editor. But you will be working in groups and have a full week to put together a campaign. It just might land you a little extra credit in this class and possibly launch your own political career in front of or behind the camera. Professor Allen mentioned at the start of the class today that I've done a few things in life. I've worked on 3 presidential campaigns. I've managed over 70 campaigns from coast to coast. And what I'm expecting of this class, certainly my sections, is at least one campaign ad that I can put up there tomorrow and not have it look like Jeff Wagner. Okay? Good luck to you on the assignment. I truly hope you've enjoyed my part of the presentation. And if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them now. My office hours again are Thursday from 9 to 12. If you have any questions about campaign advertising that don't provoke, we have a question.
Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's also a new poll up there. Feel free to come by for any questions at any time.
Thank you so much to JJ. You guys go out the back door.